Everyone knows Fleetwood Mac, Genesis, Black Sabbath, but when you think of Phil Collins, you think of Genesis. Or you think of In the Air Tonight. When you think of Stevie Nicks, you think of Rhiannon. Or Edge of 17. This video is about 6 artists you know for their solo hits, but who started in bands that now seem too small for them. 6 stories of people who said, "I can do it alone," and actually did. Which of these artists truly became bigger than the band? Ozzy Osbourne is fired from Black Sabbath for being a drunk, drug-addled, unemployed man. And he thinks his life is over. But Sharon Arden, the daughter of the band's manager, shows up at a Los Angeles hotel where Ozzy is sitting in a puddle of his own urine, smoking marijuana, and offers to manage him. Ozzy accepts. He forms the band with Randy Rhoads, and in 1980, he releases Blizzard of Oz with Crazy Train. Then comes Diary of a Madman. In a few years, he is bigger than he ever was with Black Sabbath. Ozzy's solo career sells over 100 million albums. He gets a reality show. He becomes a celebrity. He enters the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Black Sabbath and proves that being fired was the best thing that ever happened to him. Wham ended at their peak after 5 number ones in the UK and 2 albums that dominated the world. But George Michael already knew he was bigger than the group. He released Faith in 1987. He wrote and produced practically everything himself, and the album sold over 20 million copies worldwide, more than 10 million in the United States alone. It generated 6 hit singles, including I Want Your Sex, Father Figure, and the title track Faith, which became an anthem. He recorded with Aretha Franklin, with Elton John. He won Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Faith, George Michael, album producer George Michael.
And in 1990, he returned with Listen Without Prejudice, which proved it wasn't luck. It was talent. George Michael sold over 100 million solo records, far more than Wham sold, and he became one of the greatest artists of all time, proving that sometimes a partner is just dead weight. Stevie Nicks releases Belladonna, and the world discovers that the female voice of Fleetwood Mac is a star in her own right. She had been part of the band since 1975. She wrote Dreams, Rhiannon, Landslide, Gold Dust Woman. But now she proves she doesn't need Lindsey Buckingham, or Christine McVie, or anyone. Belladonna sells 4 million copies in the United States alone. It reaches number 1 on the Billboard charts. It includes Stop Draggin' My Heart Around with Tom Petty, Leather and Lace with Don Henley, and Edge of 17. And Stevie Nicks becomes one of the biggest female rock stars. She is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once with Fleetwood Mac in 1998 and once solo in 2019. The only woman to achieve this. And Stevie's solo career has sold over 30 million records, and she continues recording and performing to this day, proving that sometimes the backing vocals are the lead vocals. Phil Collins releases In the Air Tonight, and the world discovers that the Genesis drummer and vocalist is much more than just the guy who replaced Peter Gabriel. He had been in the band since 1970. He played drums and sang backing vocals, but when Gabriel left in 1975, Collins took over the vocals and led Genesis to the top of the charts with Follow You, Follow Me, Misunderstanding, and Abacab. But his solo career truly exploded in 1981. Face Value sold millions of copies. In the Air Tonight became an anthem, and then came No Jacket Required in 1985, which sold over 12 million copies in the United States. It won 3 Grammys, including Album of the Year, and Phil Collins became one of the biggest stars of the 80s. He performed at Live Aid on both sides of the Atlantic on the same day, first at Wembley with Sting, then at JFK Stadium in the United States, the only person to do that. And Phil Collins' solo career has sold over 100 million records, proving that sometimes the drummer is the most talented guy in the band. Lionel Richie records Endless Love with Diana Ross. The song becomes one of the biggest hits of all time. And he realizes he's grown bigger than the Commodores. Since 1968, he was the guy from the Tuskegee Band. He wrote Easy, 3 Times a Lady, Sail On, and Still. But now he writes Lady for Kenny Rogers, and the world realizes that Lionel Richie is more than funk and soul. He's a universal songwriter. In 1982, he releases his self-titled solo album with Truly, You Are, and My Love. And then comes Can't Slow Down in 1983, which sells about 10 million copies worldwide. It wins a Grammy for Album of the Year. It has All Night Long and Hello. And Lionel Richie becomes one of the biggest pop stars of the 80s. He sells more than 90 million solo records, much more than the Commodores sold without him. He co-wrote We Are the World with Michael Jackson. And today, when someone mentions Lionel Richie, they think of Hello, of Dancing on the Ceiling, not the guy who sang Brick House in a funk band. Simon and Garfunkel ended amidst artistic disputes and delays on the album Bridge Over Troubled Water. But Paul Simon didn't waste any time. In 1972, he released his first major solo album, Paul Simon, with Mother and Child Reunion and Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. Then came There Goes Rhymin' Simon, still crazy after all these years, and in 1986, Graceland, which sold millions of copies. It mixed pop with South African music. It won the Grammy for Album of the Year and established Paul Simon as one of the greatest songwriters in history, independent of Art Garfunkel. Paul Simon's solo career has sold over 50 million albums. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once with Simon and Garfunkel and once solo. And today, when someone mentions Simon, they first think of the guy from Graceland, not the guy from Mrs. Robinson. 6 artists, 6 bands that faded away, and 6 careers that proved that sometimes the whole is less than the sum of its parts. The question remains whether these bands would have lasted longer if they had let the greatest talent shine alone sooner, or if the tension within the group is precisely what creates the magic. If this video made you want to listen to these solo albums again, or discover one you didn't know, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on which of these artists you think had the best solo career. Because the next story I'm going to tell is about artists who tried solo careers and failed miserably. And you won't believe what happened to them.